Okay, yesterday, now we're learning the Dvar Malchut. The Dvar Malchut are speeches which were given by the Lubavitcher Rebbe in the beginning of 1992, shortly before he had a stroke. This is only like 2 months before he had a stroke, which rendered him paralyzed. Half of his body was not able to speak. So here we're talking about the subject of our Torah portion, which was Shmot, names. Names. The names of the Jewish people. Why is it called names? This week's Torah portion is called names. The names of the Jewish people that went in to Egypt are the names that they went out with. So the Rebbe said, if you remember yesterday, the names that the Jewish people went into Egypt with, the Midrash says that it's not talking about the names they went in with, it's talking about the names they went out with. And the Rebbe says, what can we learn from this when it's obviously not so? These were the beginning of our Torah portion says, these are the names of the Jews that went into Egypt. And the Midrash says, no, it means going out of Egypt. What does it mean? It means that every moment that we are not revealed godliness, feeling godliness, even when we go into the exile, every moment in the exile, we're supposed to be thinking about going out. The going into the exile is only a preparation for going out. Why do we have to go in at all? Why? And it's because this strengthens us. It pulls out our power of defiance, our ability to make choices against all nature, against all the world, to choose the creator of the universe, to choose to do what's right, against all odds. If we would have had an easy life, then we would have made all the mistakes that the Jews made, and we would think we were right. We would think everything was okay. But by putting us into exile, we had to make difficult choices and to hold on to our Judaism, to hold on to our connection of God, even though it meant losing everything, even though it meant suffering. And we made mistakes. We made more and more mistakes over and over again. And it teaches us how not to make those mistakes. We made mistakes because we acted naturally. We acted like any normal person would act. That's why we made mistakes. In the first temple, they worshipped idols because everybody worshipped idols. In the second temple, there was hatred between everybody because everybody hated everybody else. That was the spirit of the times. It took a Superman to go against these urges. So through our mistakes, we learn little by little, hopefully. Nevertheless, every moment we have to be thinking about the future redemption and not justify ourselves. We have to be learning every moment and yearning for the redemption. The Yuvan said we can understand this whole thing. And again, the Jewish people are not normal people. We cannot act normally, think normally, deep down. Externally, we can be normal like everybody else. We can have a job, we can be scientists, we can be butchers and bakers and candlestick, whatever you want. We can do everything that everybody else does. But really inside, our loyalty is to the creator of the universe. Everything we do is in order to make this world a better world. That's what the creator wants. And that's the idea of wanting Moshiach every moment. Here we go. We can understand. That's what the Rebbe is trying to do. He's trying to shake us. Shake us that we should not be satisfied. I think I've said this maybe at least 100 times. They came and interviewed the Lubavitcher Rebbe once, when the Rebbe gave out dollars on every Sunday. So they came from BBC, and they asked the Rebbe, Rebbe, are you happy? And the Rebbe said, I'm happy, but I'm not satisfied. There's a video you can see. And as every moment that the Mashiach is not here, we have to be crushed, miserable, terrible. But on the other hand, we have to be happy. That's the only way we're going to get out. The Yuvan said we can understand by explaining the Mishnah in the first chapter of Brachos, the Gemara Brachos. Sha'omim said, we say in the Haggadah of Passover. What do we say? It's a Mishnah, but we say this in the Haggadah of Passover. Omer Rebbe Lezer ben Azariah, Rebbe Lezer ben Azariah said, Hare Anika ben Shivim Shana, I am like a person that's 70 years old. It says really he was 18 years old, but they didn't want, and they wanted to choose him to be the head of the Sanhedrin, but he was too young. So overnight, there grew, his beard became white. And they said, okay, now you can be the head of the Sanhedrin. You can be the head. And the first thing he said was, I am like 70 years old. In other words, he wasn't really 70 years old. I'm like 70 years old. But lo zechiti, and I did not merit. And there's up to now, no one wanted to, the law wasn't one, no one wanted to decide the law like I want. What do I want? Lo zechiti shetei omar yetziat Mitzrayim b'lailot ad until shedorsha ben Zoma. Okay, I'm saying Yetziat Mitzrayim. In Shema Yisrael, there's a commandment in Judaism to say Shema Yisrael. There's really two paragraphs, Shema Yisrael, two paragraphs. And we say, understand Jews, God is one. It's a commandment to say that twice a day. It's a commandment. It's a commandment. There's a lot of commandments in Judaism, and this is one of them. One of the commandments is you should say and try to think about what it means. Understand Jews that God is one, right? There's two paragraphs that talk about God. If you do these words, do my commandments, put a mezuzah on your door, put the tefillin. They're written in the mezuzah on your door, on Jewish doors. They've written these two paragraphs. Well, there's a third paragraph. This third paragraph talks about tzitzit. Tzitzit, wearing tzitzit. You know, there's a talit. The Jews have this thing here. See this talit. These things are called tzitzit, the strings. And then the talit called tzitzit. This is a garment we wear over a garment, tzitzit. But at the end of that, it talks about going out of Egypt. Right at the end of that paragraph of talking about these tzitzit, it talks about, I am God that took you out of Egypt. So he said, I am 70 years old, and which he wasn't, though. He was only, 18 years old. So, but up to now, I did not merit that they should say Yetziat Mitzrayim. Yetziat Mitzrayim, that's this third paragraph that he wanted to tack on to the Shema Yisrael, which we do say, in fact. In the nighttime, the commandment to say Shema is in the daytime, once in the day and once in the night. So the day, we're obligated to wear this tzitzit, but in the nighttime, you're not obligated to wear tzitzit. It's also another argument, but in any case, in the nighttime, you're not obligated. So they said, the people said, okay, we'll say this extra, you want to put on this extra paragraph, we'll say it in the daytime, but we're not going to say it in the nighttime, because the nighttime, we're not obligated to say tzitzit. They said, but yes, but there's going out of Egypt is there. I want that to be said in the nighttime. And the rabbis didn't listen to him until Ben Zoma came along. And Ben Zoma said, there's a sentence in the Torah said, Laman tizkor yom tzeitcha me'eretz Mitzrayim, you should remember the day of your leaving Eretz Israel, all the days of your life. The days of your life, that's the days, all the days of your life. This means also the nighttime. Therefore, he said, this also includes the nighttime. We should mention going out of Egypt also in the nighttime. Good. This is, okay, now we're getting to the part we want. The Chachamim Omrim, but the wise men, that they added something on to rabbis, to this Ben Zoma. They said, Yemei Chayecha, what does this mean? You should remember going out of Egypt all the days of your life. The days of your life, this is, the days of your life means when you're in this world, now, day and nighttime. Kol Yemei Chayecha, all the days of your life, this even means in the days of the Mashiach. Even when Mashiach comes, we'll still remember going out of Egypt. That's what the wise men said. The Chachamim. These were the Pharisees, the Perushim. Genius men, they could raise the dead, holy people. They said, you should remember going all the days of your life means even in the days of the Mashiach. Simple meaning. Okay. But we can also read this in another way. We can read like this. We can read it like this. Kol yamei chayecha, all of the days of your life, lavi should be devoted to bringing the days of the Mashiach. That's out of context. But nevertheless, it's implied. Let's see what Rashi says. Says Rashi, Ben Shivim Shana, he said, what does it mean that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said, I am like 70 years? Kavaro yiti nira zaken, I appear to be old, velo zaken mamish, shabo alai seva, there came upon me old age, yom she'aviru, the day that they evicted Rabbi Gamliel from being the head. Rabbi Gamliel, he shamed Rabbi Yoshua, and so they said, okay, you can't be the head of the Sanhedrin anymore. And they appointed Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. He became the head. And it ended up that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was just the head 1 week, and Rabbi Gamliel was 2 weeks. Like it says later on in the prayer of Tfilat Shachar, in the Gemara in Brachot. But Oto Yom, that day that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was appointed to be the leader, as Ben Zoma stood up and he said this explanation. Okay, a little bit complicated, right? But the point of the matter is that we're supposed to remember going out of Egypt in the nighttime, namely in the time of exile. And also, even when Moshiach comes, we'll also remember going out of Egypt. Hasidic explanation is all of the days of your life, you should always try to bring to the coming of the Mashiach. Kol yomei chayecha lahavi, to bring the Mashiach. Every moment of your life. This works out with what we said in the beginning of the class. The beginning of our Torah portion talks about the Jews going into Egypt. The Midrash says it's talking about how the Jews went out of Egypt, against the simple meaning. Says the Rebbe, no, what it means is all of the days of your life, even in the nighttime, even when you're in exile, you always have to be concerned with one thing, to bring to the days of the Mashiach. The Jews, when they went into Egypt, all they were thinking about was going out of Egypt. And that's a lesson to us. Says the Rebbe, so when was this whole thing said? It was the day that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, he became the head of the Sanhedrin. First thing he did was make the statement about saying this thing about tzitzit, that talks about going out of Egypt in the nighttime and also the days of the Mashiach. So we have to understand, what has this got to do with Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah? That the Mishnah Nema was said on that very day that he became the Nasi. He became the Nasi. The Nasi means the leader of the Sanhedrin. The word Nasi really means the king. Okay. Mistaber Lomar, it's logical to say, Shemikivan, that since the Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, that he was learning this topic in the Torah on the day that he became the leader of the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin was the great court of 71 men. Harizeh, so this is Kashur Bavoda, so this must have some connection to his service as being the leader of the Jewish people. The Nasi in practical was the leader of Jewish people. Al derechiyuv hakadima b'limud Torah b'inyanim shezman grama. Like we said, that when you learn, you should always learn topics in Torah that are relevant to the time. Right, the holiday of when Passover comes, 30 days before you should learn laws of Passover, etc. The Yeshlom, we can say Sha'al derech zeh is every single Jew, and especially learning Torah b'inyanim shezman shelo grama. That you should learn matters of the Torah and things that are relevant to you. So it was also with Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. He said, I am now 70 years. Why 70 years? He was an old man. Why say 70 years? Okay, so it explains like this. The Mishnah Zu, in this Mishnah, this is a Mishnah in Brachot. Bol Yadei Bitoy, it comes, is expressed. Gadol ha'ilui, the tremendous value, v'shevach, and the praises of going out of Egypt. Shagam, that even after the Jewish people left Egypt, nevertheless we have an obligation to remember going out of Egypt, kol yamei chayecha, all the days of your life. whether in the daytime or whether in the nighttime. That's what Ben Zoma said. Whether we're talking about now in the time we're in exile or whether in the days of the Mashiach, we have to remember going out of Egypt. Why? We learned a little bit about that in the Mimer in the morning. I mean, first of all, the Egypt of today is definitely not the Egypt that it was back then. Right? Back then, first of all, Egypt, they ruled over the whole world, and it was a tremendously licentious and idolatrous place. Right? It says they were magicians and sorcerers, and it was the most decadent place in the world, Egypt. That certainly is not so now. I mean, as far as I know, the people in Egypt are religious people. They believe in God. There certainly is not the same decadence in Egypt there was back then. I mean, I don't think Egypt in any way is more decadent now than any of the other countries in the world. Back then it was terrible. To the degree that there's even a commandment in the Torah that you're not supposed to do what the Egyptians did. That, by the way, is why lesbianism is forbidden. Because it says back then, women used to get married to women. A woman would get married to two men. That's not to go into the disgusting details. But it says there's a commandment in the Torah not to do what they did in Egypt. Right? So Egypt. So why should we remember that all the time? It's a different Egypt. It's a different world. It says no. This going out of Egypt is the first of the 10 commandments. I am God that took you out of Egypt. The first of the 10 commandments. This is a Yesod Gadol. This is a basic foundation, the Amud Chazak, and one of the pillars of our Torah and our faith. That God took us out of Egypt. We were slaves there, and God took us out. First of all, it comes to tell us that God is active in the world, right? For sure, He exists. People can believe that God exists, but He's got nothing to do with the world. You want something to do, you have to pray to a person, or you have to pray to a spirit, or you have to pray to whatever it is, some other God or a statue or something like that. But God is too high up. No, taking us out of Egypt shows us that God is involved in the world, right? Okay, that's one thing. But you have to all the time talk about going out of Egypt. Why? Remember Egypt in the daytime and in the nighttime. Even when Mashiach comes, you have to remember going out of Egypt. Because then we remember that there's such a thing as redemption. B'nai Yisrael, that the Jewish people went out from Avdut, being slaves, and they became free people. Free, essentially free. Avadai, servants of the creator of the universe. That's called free. A person is not the servant of the you got to be a servant to someone. Right? I think there's even a song with that. But the fact of the matter is if you're not a servant of the creator of the universe, then the world is going to have an effect on you. You're going to think you're the creator of the universe. After all, everybody's alive. You feel that you're alive. You can't understand how. You can't feel that anything is creating you. So it must be that I am God, in some way at least, right? You see that there's policemen, so you can't do what you want, you get punished. But if there were no policemen, then everybody would think they were God. The whole world would be just total confusion. As we see that it is, the places where there's no policemen, it's just total bedlam. In the service of man, Yetzias Mitzrayim, going out of Egypt, shows Al Yetzia, going out. When is a person truly free? When he connects to his creator. And the creator is very dynamic. He's always putting in front of us challenges and work and things that we have to do. Going out of Egypt shows going out of the godly soul from the limitations of the body and the world. If we don't do what God says, then we're going to do what the world says. Or at least we'll be obsessed with the world. If you're not connected to God, then you're alone. You feel you're alone. To unite with God by means of the Torah and the commandments. That's true freedom. McCaven sins, this is a general topic, B'kol Torah and the whole Torah and Judaism, going out of false limitations, attaining true identity and not slave identity. Lochin, therefore, Tizkor Yom Tzedcha, you remember the day of going out of Egypt, all the days of your life, ad until and often, B'kol Dvar in every single generation, and every day A person is obligated to see himself as though he went today out of Egypt. There's 3 levels of this going out of Egypt. So what's the Rebbe saying? God made a creation, and he put man in this creation, and man is made in the image of God. And the creation screams out that what does it mean in the image of God? That you are God. There's nothing more than you. You're the beginning, you're the end, you're all there is. Do what you want, do what you think, do what you feel. Don't limit yourself. That's the biggest limitation of all, because you're limited to yourself. You're a slave to your own desires, a slave to your own urges and impulses. People don't know what they're supposed to do. They don't know what they ought to do. They don't know what they want to do. Also, an advertisement comes up. Oh, that's what I want. Right? Some nut comes up and says, girls should be boys. The reason you feel that you're a boy, I don't feel I'm a boy. Maybe you are. Yeah, you're right. Maybe I am. You know what? So let's make an operation. Could be. We'll try it. Right? Won't hurt. Don't knock it till you try it. Right? Maybe you try it. Right? People don't know what they want. They don't know what they're supposed to do. They don't know who they are. Professor Viktor Frankl said this, what is it? Almost 100 years ago. He wasn't a religious person. He just saw what was going on in the world. Needless to say, he had nobody agreed with him. The Lubavitcher Rebbe agreed with him. And especially there's 3 levels of this going out of Egypt. We have to remind ourselves constantly that we're missing out on a big prize, tremendous, treasure of love and meaning and dynamic life. We're missing out on it because we're stuck in ourselves. There's 3 ways of going out of, and that means we're in Egypt. We have to go out. There's 3 levels of this. Number 1, let's see how far we get over here. Yeah, we go. Ready? 3 levels. 3 levels. Number 1, Maskirim Yetzias Mitzrayim b'chol yom v'yom, every day. Like it says, Or Hashem, the light of God. Vayikra Elokim la'or yom. Tzorich b'pashtus, simply, you have to see yourself as though you today are going out of Egypt. Every Jew has to go out of his limitations. That's number 1. You're limited. Sometimes you lose your temper. You lost your temper. It's a sign you're far away from God. You're far away. You got a lot of work to do. You have jealousy. You ever get depressed? Sign you're far away from God. What are you supposed to do? You got work to do. You have to try to go out of your own personality, your own negative thoughts, speech, action, feelings, all the time. Number 1. Number 2, Chiddush Nosef, there's an addition thing, Shemaskirim Yetzias Mitzrayim, that you also have to mention going out of Egypt in the nighttime. Like Ben Zoma says, Lamantis Korat Yom Tzescha Me'eretz Mitzrayim, Kol Yomei Chayecha, including the nights, Shafilu B'Zaman D'Layla V'Choshech, even the time when there's darkness. And night, Kisha Hashem Einenu Me'ir, when the light of God does not shine, difficult times, hard times. Until you feel you're in exile. God forbid, a time of sickness, a time of poverty, a time of disappointment, of frustration. When you really, the whole world is crumbling around you. Then Yochela, you are able, and you must go out of Egypt. You should realize the whole thing is just Egypt. It's not you. It's Egypt. You have to go out. Gimel. Then there's a 3rd level. So, the first level is talking about a regular Jew who believes in God and everything, right? He does the Torah, does the commandments. Nevertheless, he has to realize I'm in Egypt. I have to go out all the time out of my own limitations, out of my own shortcomings, etc. I have to go out, connect more to God. Number 2 is a Jew doesn't do anything, or in this situation, which is terrible, awful situation, screaming out that there's no God, screaming out that everything is going wrong. everything is broken, everything is terrible. Daniel in the lion's den, Jonah in the belly of the whale, King David surrounded by all sorts of enemies. Even in those situations, you have to go out of Egypt. Number two. Number three, Chachamim Mechadshim, the wise men, the Chachamim, they Eran, Shekol Yemei Chayecha, this is this world, everything we had before, but also even in the days of the Mashiach. She'achirush said this is a double novelty. Number one, remembering going out of Egypt, the obligation of remembering all of the days of your life, this refers to the days of your life in this world, in this time. And this includes also the days of the Mashiach, until this includes even going out of Egypt in this whole world before Mashiach comes. Again, remembering going out of Egypt, the obligation, this refers to all of this world, including the days of the Mashiach, and it also means all of the days of your life, all of the days of life, including before Mashiach comes. Okay, so you might think like this: Mashiach took me out, he revealed what godliness is. Now I realize my mistakes. He's shown what true life is, and now I remember how I was stuck back there. Thank you, God, you took us out. But what about when we're still stuck in this world? No, we should also remember going out of Egypt. We should also remember going out of Egypt, but I'm not out of Egypt, I'm still in Egypt. Remember, well, let's see. The novelty in this is even more. Even though in the days of the Mashiach, when there's the Geula, it's not relevant, this whole idea of remembering the redemption. We went out, it's like a person that was poor and somebody gave him, $100 on the street. Oh, this is amazing, $100, I'm so happy. And then every year he remembers that day that that person gave. 5 years later, somebody comes and gives him $1 million. He forgets the $100. He forgets the $1 million. He's a totally different person. It says, even though that in the days of the Mashiach, you might think it's not relevant to think about going out of Egypt. Going out of Egypt is like receiving the $100. Gam'az, nevertheless, then we should also remember going out of Egypt. And even more, even though that the future redemption is incomparable to the redemption of Egypt, going out of Egypt, because it is a redemption that is final. There won't be any possibility of going into exile. Then it will be as Ruach HaTumah V'Min Ha'Oretz. It says eventually there'll be even no bad in the world. There won't even be death in the world. There won't be sickness. Yitzia v'Geula Shleimah. You'll go out from all limitations. But nevertheless, the going out of Egypt was a redemption. And I'm sorry, Masha'ink, which is not the case. I'm sorry, the going out of Egypt. After that, we see that we left Egypt, and there were other exiles. We went into Babylon. Right now, we're in exile. Why? Ki hara, because the bad, which is on the souls of the Jews, is still there. Therefore, the Jews had to run away from Egypt. Nevertheless, even now, we have to mention going out of Egypt, Gam, also for the days of the Mashiach. Why? Because Yazkiru az Yetziat Mitzrayim, because we will mention then going out of Egypt. So this is a proof. Shezeu avur to'elet. There must be in the days of the Mashiach. We're going to remember going out of Egypt back then, even though that was small change. It must be that mentioning going out of Egypt that we left back then, there must be something better, something unique that won't be in the days of the Mashiach. Will even cause then, like we'll say later. So it's going to be that going out of Egypt, that we went out of Egypt 3,300 years ago, it contains some sort of a point that will never be repeated. It's some sort of a benefit that's incomparable. Even incomparable to the days of the Mashiach. We'll still have to be remembering, take this point and use it even in the days of the Mashiach, when there won't be any more bad in the world. There won't be any more Egypt, nothing to go out of. But we'll still have to remember going out of Egypt. There was something that happened, some occurrence, some level, some revelation that occurred when we left Egypt that was so irrepeatable that we'll have to remind ourselves of it even when Mashiach comes. What is this thing? We'll talk about it, God willing, tomorrow. Let's learn now the Yom Yom.